In the 30 years that I've been working with victim assistance, the most seismic change I've seen has been the increase in the use of the internet and computers. The problem of sextortion, as it's called, is something that has become almost commonplace.
Sextortion is when an online predator essentially looks to find vulnerable victims. They'll go on certain online chat rooms and areas where minor children or vulnerable adults might be, and they request certain photos and images of our victims.
And once that happens, now the control takes place. The subject identifies himself and then will show the video and then extort the child to continue to produce.
Well, Lucas Michael Chancellor was one of the first cases which was subsequently termed sextortion that we had seen, and certainly at the time, at least, the largest in scope, both with the number of victims and geographically. Roughly 350 young girls were victimized by him. They were located in 35 states, 3 Canadian provinces, and the UK. FBI's Victim Services Division was critical. They were a critical player in this investigation.
Larry Meyer and I had a great working relationship prior to Chancellor, but when he initially got the call, he included me right from the beginning, and that really proved to be helpful throughout the case.
This was a huge team effort, and Victim Services Division provided the child and adolescent forensic interview specialist, which did the majority of the victim interviews.
Anytime he identified a victim, he would communicate with me, and I was able to immediately connect with the victim specialist in that state where the victim was, so that we could begin working with the victim and the family members.
The victim specialist very often went on the interviews with the agents or the child forensic interview specialist, so they could render the services and get the assistance the victims required.
In speaking with the victims, the common theme seemed to be that they were all fearful that he would carry out the threats that he made, but also felt, a lot of guilt and blame. They felt that they were doing something wrong and that they didn't have anyone that they could talk to initially.
Victim services were crucial in this case because this case was all about the victims. Some of the trauma these girls went through, 5 of them attempted suicide, 3 of them attempted suicide twice. 2 victims, they told their parents what they were going through, and their parents were so terrified that Chancellor might know where they live and abduct their girl, they moved. The victim services and providing that compassionate contact, telling these young girls and their families that they're not alone and that we're here to help, was instrumental.
I saw the progression from the moment that they were identified in the case and that initial fear of not knowing whether or not Chancellor was going to carry out the threats that he was making, to the level of support that we were able to extend to them and their family members through education and services, and then seeing those very victims write victim impact statements, powerful statements. We had a handful of victims that showed up to the sentencing, and they were able to confront Chancellor in the courtroom. They actually sat in the front row of the courtroom, and he ultimately received 105 years in federal prison. I think it's important for the agents and law enforcement alike to really have a great working relationship with the victim specialist within their agency, so that they can focus on the investigation and really honing in on the subject, where we can take the burden off of them as far as working with the victims, the family members, and wrapping them with services.
The FBI has been dealing with sextortion for a while and working with these cases and these kids. So I think we have learned a lot from it, and we are more than happy to be able to share that. Our child interviewers who do these cases often do training. It is a growing problem. It's something that I think all law enforcement agencies, if they haven't faced yet, will be facing in the near future. And I think it behooves all of us to try to learn as much as we can from each other so that we have the best response to these cases.